Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about two of our planets, Mars and Venus, that are both in Mercury's signs of Gemini and Virgo now. Venus moved into Virgo on Sunday, the 24th, I believe, or Saturday, excuse me, the 24th. And Mars just moved into Gemini on the 25th, on Monday. So we've just had this shift occur. And neither of these two planets are in very good intelligence in these signs. Venus, in particular, is debilitated in Virgo. Mars has a different kind of challenge in Gemini, which I'll get into in a minute. And the ruler, Mercury, is still retrograde as of this moment, but in a couple hours is moving direct. And he is at a place he's been. This is now our third moment in time where he's going to cross the Gandanta point, this karmic knot between Cancer and Leo. So he's at the end of Cancer now in a star called Aslacia, which is the clinging star. So we have a lot to dive into here, and I'm going to make it as short as possible or as brief as possible. And I'm going to begin with Mars because this is really the energy we probably felt a big jolt of on Monday, where Mars went from Taurus, where we can be a little bit more laid back and lazy and passionate, but not as much with our ideas and our words. Mars leap into Gemini really brings us into the mind. And Mars is an active planet. It's a planet that needs physical exertion. It needs something to outlet. And so in the air signs, oftentimes we find that that ends up in the mind. And particularly in Gemini, where we're already bouncing from idea to idea and sort of in this playful mode around knowledge and around information, it can get really dicey really quick because we begin sort of, maybe throwing around ideas and being playful about it. And then before we know it, we're getting competitive about it, or we're getting angry about it. And we're starting things like arguments. So our words can be very harsh. We can suddenly see things as like, it's like this or it's like that. We don't really have that flexibility that Gemini is famous for, because Mars really wants to draw a point, make a point, and fight for it. And so we're taking a stance of some sort. But unlike a Jupiterian stance where it's connected to a philosophy or a higher ideal, this is the kind of stance that usually comes from more of a feeling of, I want to be right, I want to win. And there can be a lot of underneath the surface emotionalism and resentments that have been building up because of Mercury's time in Cancer and this retrograde motion that we've been going through. We've been passing through all of the things that we're holding on to emotionally, the things that we haven't necessarily been sharing. And so we might have these kind of resentments popping out in the form of funny, angry little jabs here and there. And so we have to be really mindful of our communication at this point. A great way to kind of send that energy in a particular direction is to play things like mental games, games like chess, where you're really strategizing and you have an opportunity to win and to try to use all that brain power in kind of aggressive manner. Other kinds of wordplay and things that you can do on your own, challenging yourself with crossword puzzles, or I don't know, people play solitaire, or I don't know what other kinds of games people can play, but there's all kinds of ways you can mentally challenge yourself that can help bring some of that energy out. But of course, ultimately, Mars wants to be physically active. And this can parlay into the bedroom because Gemini does have that very sexual energy. But again, if there's a lot of like mental banter and arguments going on, that can go south pretty quick. One of the things that you can do is moving meditations, because it can be hard to sit still and meditate. You can walk, you can do breath work, you can do yoga asana. And if you're having a difficult conversation, a really great way to deal with that is to walk side by side together. So instead of being in that adversarial across the way from each other in this sort of controversial or confrontational presentation, you're more on side by side together, being able to discuss whatever's coming up through your head. And just be aware that the mind is jumping and moving in this very rapid way. And we're quick to want to hold on to something and make it into a point. And so that's up for not just you, but it's up for everyone. It's up for the people that you're dealing with as well, too. Now, bringing us into the realm of Venus, we have the situation of Venus being debilitated in Virgo. Venus has a rough run on this part of the zodiac. From Cancer to Virgo is the most challenging part of the sky for Venus. We are very weepy and sort of, over giving during the Cancer period. Then in Leo, we're like standing on our thrones, wanting to be admired and appreciated. And then we move into Virgo and we start getting really nitpicky about all the ways our needs aren't getting met and all the ways that we see what's wrong with somebody else. Venus is a very interesting planet in its exaltation and debilitation because Venus is actually friendly with Mercury. And in Mercury's other sign of Gemini, Venus is in very good dignity. Venus is actually unfriendly to the ruler of the sign of exaltation, Pisces. So this says a lot about our relationship with our happiness and our relationships with each other, right? That we actually are in a state of unhappiness when we are in this sort of disapproving placement of Virgo, where we see all the things that are wrong and we're getting very categorical about it. And in a way, we're noticing all the things that are not making us happy. And this is going to make us less happy, not more happy, pointing out all those things, because the truth of the world is that nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? We're not going to be perfect. Our clothes aren't going to be perfect. Our body's not going to be perfect. And our partner's not going to be perfect. When we have its exalted placement in Pisces, we're really willing to let go of all the details. We're willing to kind of just live in this sort of fantasy world around relationships and around love and around happiness and just be happy, even if nothing is really meeting our needs. And so it's a very interesting dynamic when we think about Venus and love in this relational way being very conditional, really. It has to be something where both of our needs are met. Notice that Venus doesn't do well in Cancer, where it's all about unconditional love, because relationships between two adults are not actually meant to be unconditional. There's supposed to be conditions. Needs must be met, or else there isn't a relationship. But in Virgo, we get a little too caught up in that. We get really dialed into the details, and it becomes impossible for anyone to meet them. Now, this is going to be really enhanced by the fact that Ketu is here. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly, just to show where we're at. Venus obviously moves a lot faster than Mars. So Venus is going to race through this sign, and Mars is going to be in Gemini until October 20th. And then he's going to move into Cancer, where he's actually debilitated. So we'll have more videos on that coming up, and he's going to be retrograde and all these things. But right now we have Venus here getting closer to Ketu. And we can see that in just a week, Venus is already past Ketu, actually, and we have the moon here as well, just past our new moon. So the Ketu energy is also similar to that Virgo quality of being very exact and picking out the thing that's wrong. Ketu really fixates on the one thing that's not right about something. And it continues to harbor beneath the surface because Ketu generally doesn't bring things above the surface unless it gets activated by something else. Well, it's getting activated by Venus, passing over, saying, actually, I don't, the thing that's bringing us together, the thing that's making me feel happy is actually, not worth it in some way, or there's some kind of cut off energy, because Ketu is quick to cut things off of this world, because Ketu is where we're really not of this world. And so this is a really dicey moment in time for relationships, because we also have then, of course, Mars saying the wrong thing or saying, wanting to win the fight and wanting to argue. And Mercury crossing the Skandanta. And it just so happened that I ended up on September 4th, where he's crossing the Gandanta exactly. So we have him moving from Cancer back into Leo. And we've been here before. This is really the big blessing we have, is that we've been here before. I was kind of trying to see when exactly it happened. So it happened really early on the 4th, Hawaii time, a little bit later in other places. This Gandanta point, we've already been across, and then we've been back over retrograde, and now we're going across again. And it's where we don't have anything to kind of help us move from the weepy Cancerian energy into that more kingly place that Leo wants us to be. Mercury also really suffers in these signs, much like Venus, because our communication is based on wanting to exchange ideas. We're wanting to share information with someone. And in Cancer, we often get very emotional and weepy about it. And we're clinging to the fact that we want to be loved. We're clinging to the connection itself rather than the truth of our words. When we move into the Leo part of things, we want to lord over people. We want to control people with our words. We want to be powerful. We want to be the one who's saying the important things. And when we first arrive, it's really important to check in with the ancestral beings, with our lineage, with the ways in which we've held power in the past, and it hasn't worked. So this is a place that we're passing through with the moon, right before the new moon on Sunday, Magha. The moon is going to be in Magha this coming Sunday. Not to get too confusing with us, but here, actually, just go back a couple days. The Sunday, the first, even, we're going to have our moon moving into Magha, and then we're going to have our new moon on the 2nd, where the moon and sun come together in Purva Falguni. So we have an opportunity to go through this emotionally once a month. When the moon moves through here, the sun just passed through here. And like I said, Mercury's already been through here and is passing through again. So we have an opportunity to really look at the way in which we've been using our words, the way in which we've been using our communication, and the ways in which we are not necessarily being in full integrity with our vulnerability, because that's really what the Cancer part of things is bringing up for us. Like, are we sharing ourselves vulnerably, or are we feeling feelings that are vulnerable, but sharing them in ways that are more intense or aggressive or controlling? And this is really where the things start to get dicey in relationships. And then that playful, funny Gemini energy, where we just want to make a joke about it, or we just want to, you know, play a game about it, but it starts to get really like intense quickly, is the other side of that coin, where we get carried away in our communication and we're not actually caring about the connection itself. Because of course, on the other end, we're like, well, do I even care about the connection? Because Ketu and Venus are getting closer in Virgo there. So it's a really good time to take a couple breaths before you make any kind of communication in your relationships, to really allow yourself to, you know, sit with the things that you feel upset about in your life, and really find where you can take some ownership and make yourself happy. You know, Venus in Virgo is a wonderful time to do self-care rituals, you know, do things like cleansing or herbal treatments and massages, and take care of your body. It's a wonderful time to really clean your home and really, you know, sage and purify everything that brings you happiness and beauty within your world that you can control, because ultimately we can't control other people. So I hope this is helpful. I look forward to seeing you again soon. If you wonder how these energies affect you personally, because of course Mars rules different different houses for each of us. Venus rules different houses for each of us. And Virgo and Gemini are different houses for each of us. I do breakdowns for each of the 12 signs in my Patreon group, Cosmically Aligned. You can find it at patreon.com, Radha Home Astrology. And here you'll see exactly what Mars and Gemini mean.